guest today is Dr. Joe Dispenza, the New York Times bestselling author, international lecturer, researcher, and educator. Your work focuses on the intersection of neuroscience, epigenetics, and quantum physics, driven by the conviction that each of us has the potential for greatness. You specialize in teaching people to rewire their brains and recondition their bodies to make lasting changes. Dr. Joe, welcome back to London. We have you back because people want to hear your message. YouTube doesn't lie, it shows what the people want.
I honestly think that we're in an age of information. And in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. I don't want people to be intimidated because what science shows is factual, right? So they're more likely to believe in that. And the moment you use a word from some tradition or some religion or for some sect or culture, some people shut off. They have a stigma about it that really limits their participation because of their past experience, because of their beliefs. Most people live by the same feelings every single day. People wake up in the morning and your brain is a record of the past, so you wake up and you start thinking about your problems, and your problems are connected to certain people and things at certain times and places. The moment you start activating those circuits of memories related to the past experience and the environment, you're thinking in the past. Because every person, every thing, every place has a neurological network in your brain because you've experienced it. The end product of an experience is an emotion, so when you start thinking about your problems, you start feeling the emotions associated with them. You start feeling unhappy. So your thoughts are the vocabulary of your brain, your feelings are the vocabulary of your body. How you think and feel creates your state of being. So most people start their day, every single day, reaffirming their entire state of being in the familiar past. Then they rush to the predictable future, right?
And this is probably 99.99% of humans in the world wake up.
In doing that unconscious and habitually. So then they go through the same routine behaviors that they've been doing for the last 5 years. In their habitat is reinforcing their habits, and they're going through a series of unconscious choices, behaviors, experiences, and emotions. And they do that for 10 years. They're on autopilot, and their body's dragging them into a predictable future based on what they did in the past, and they've, in a sense, lost their free will to a program. I assert if you're not in the present moment, you're running a program. So if a person's living by guilt and they don't know it's guilt because it just feels like they've been feeling that way every single day or suffering, and those emotions are driving their thoughts, and if they can't think greater than how they feel, and feelings and emotions are a record of the past or thinking in the past. If you think you're a failure, you feel like a failure. Once you feel like a failure, you think you're more of a failure. And people get caught in these loops.
Okay, and when I'm stuck in my anger loop, I need to use another emotion to get myself out of that, not the analytical thinking.
Well, just ask yourself this question. Who is that anger hurting?
Me and everyone around me.
Yeah, so first your body, right? Because there's some toxicity in the long-term effect. Short-term, it's fine. But if you're caught in the rush of anger over and over again, well, you're downregulating the gene, right? And if you're thinking about the problem, check this out. You're thinking about the problem and it's creating the response of anger. You're conditioning your body to become the mind of anger. In other words, conditioning just takes a thought or an image and a feeling or an emotion. So every time you do that, you're conditioning your body to become more dependent on anger. So what you have to do is you have to remember. That means then you would have to apply some type of exercise or some type of skill to stop, close your eyes, work on your breathing, elevate your emotional state. Remember the feelings of your future instead of the feelings of your past. In other words, if you're creating a wonderful future and you feel the emotions of that future and you feel like you're connected to the energy of your future, the moment you get angry and frustrated, you just disconnected from the energy of your future, and now you're back to the energy of your past, and don't expect anything to change. But that's okay. It's not a bad thing. We're human, right? But you take a moment and say, what's more important, this or my future? Okay, give me a minute. It's going to take me a little bit. It may take me an hour to get past the chemicals, but let's go. Okay. And so people are starting to do that more and more, and the reality that they're perceiving is incidental now compared to what they're creating in their future. So they're reacting less to their environment and they're investing more of their attention and energy into a new future.
So it's all about that future, and yet most of us live our lives in the past and everything is based on the past and we're all triggered on these past pieces.
Sure. The best way to say it is if you're not defined by a vision of the future, you're left with the memories of the past. And people literally believe in their past more than they believe in their future. That's why they talk about their past more than they talk about their future. People romance their past and more in love with their past than they are in love with the future. And people who actually create amazing things in their life just were more in love with their future, and they kept it alive in their mind every day. And they, like feeding a plant or a garden, they're tending to that future every single day, and the delight that comes with it and the excitement that comes with it and the emotions that come with it cause them to literally change their brain and body over time to begin to look like the future has already happened. Now think about that. If there's evidence in your brain and body by thought alone, evidence that looks like you've already experienced your future, what does that mean? It's already happened. So relax, because it's going to find you and it's going to come in a way that you least expect. That's the beauty behind this. If you could have predicted, it's nothing new. It's got to surprise you. The brain learns by mistakes and surprises. So why not be surprised by an unknown coincidence or opportunity or synchronicity? And the moment you notice what you did inside of you that produced that effect outside of you, you're going to pay attention to what you did, and you're going to do it again, and you're going to believe less that you are the victim of your life. You know, someone or something is controlling your feelings and thoughts. So all of a sudden realizing your feelings and thoughts begin to create an outcome in your life. I think that experience then causes a human being to feel empowered. They start to believe in themselves more. And I think when we believe in ourselves, I think we believe in possibility. And when we believe in possibilities, I think we really believe in ourselves. And getting people to that point, to realize that nobody's excluded from this. You can't tell me any longer that you're too old to do this. We have brain scans of people in their 80s that will blow your mind, and they could be watching.
Always focus on a future of yours. And by doing that, you can start healing yourself in all ways.
You can't tell me you're too sick to do this work.
Right.
I've seen super sick people with 50 brain tumors turn their life around. They have no brain tumors, 50 brain tumors. You can't tell me that you had a turbulent past and you can't do this work. I've seen people that had the most abusive past are the happiest people in the world. You can't even tell me that you've never meditated before, because many times the people who have never meditated have the most profound experience because they're not expecting anything. You can't tell me you're too overweight, you're too underweight. You can't tell me any of that. You can't tell me you're too this or too that. I've seen it in all shapes, all sizes, all colors, all ages.
You mentioned the abusive past. And I would love it if we could talk a little bit about trauma today. When you see people go through trauma, Joe, do you see sometimes that some of that is passed through DNA, through culture, and then how do you end up? Because you must have a whole room full of people with different traumas, physical, emotional. How do you look at that phenomenon, and how do you get people talking about that?
The stronger the emotion that we feel from some external event in our life, the more altered we feel inside of us as a result of that condition outside of us, the more we pay attention to the cause. And the brain narrows its focus on whatever it is that's sitting there, and it freezes an image and it takes a snapshot. And that's called a memory. So the higher the emotional quotient, the more fear, the more pain, the more shock, the more anger, whatever it is, the more we pay attention to the cause. And so then we create long-term memories that way. Now the challenge is that every time we think about that trauma, we're producing the same chemistry in the brain and body as if it was happening again. So some people, after an event like that, are literally re-experiencing it 100 times in one day. And this is a crazy thing, because what it does is it activates the survival gene. And when you're in survival, what you want to do is make sure that that doesn't happen again. So what you start to do unconsciously is you start to begin to forecast what you'll do if it happens again, right? And you start selecting a worst case scenario in your mind. And then you think, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? And you start to even make it even more, you get more creative, right? And every time you do that, you start experiencing the emotion of that future based on the pain of your past, the fear of your past, the anxiety of your past, the depression of your past. And so the person's conditioning their brain and body into the past, and at the same time, they're literally bracing themselves for the worst case scenario in their life, because in survival, if you prepare for the worst, there's better chances of survival. And you could have 10 really great things go on in your life, and you could have one bad thing, and you keep focusing on that one bad thing because you got to be prepared for it happening again. So people unconsciously then spend their whole life looking around the corner, waiting for it to occur, and they're on guard. Now that's not a conscious process.
Common in PTSD from soldiers.
So
they're
common.
constantly looking for the roadside bombs, and they're highly elevated, and it's it's unconscious a lot of times.
What they're doing is, when you're in that brainwave state, you're sweeping your environment to determine if there's anything out of order. And you're doing that because the brain is on such an aroused state. In survival and stress, the brain is in a very alert state, and the brainwave patterns are high beta. You're super aroused, you're super alert, because you're vigilant about one thing out of pattern that looks unusual or unrecognizable. And the moment you see that, it's that thought that opens the door to the conditioning that you've been creating all along. Remember, this is not a conscious process. It's no different than ringing a bell and watching a dog salivate. The stimulus is also causing an autonomic, physiological, chemical change that's taking place in the person's body. And that person literally, from a biological standpoint, is back in that event.
Right.
And they're going to behave in almost the same way that they did then, because they're trapped in survival.
Right, and like you said, that's a snapshot. A lot of people never ended up talking about that event because there's a shameful process there. So it literally stays there.
You're frozen.
You're frozen.
You've stopped, from that point forward, you've stopped evolving. What we're saying is that if you can't overcome that emotion, then you can't create anything new, because that emotion is keeping you tacked to the past, right? So then
your whole future is written. Then it's
done. Yeah,
it's done.
It's done. You're in a box, right? You're in a box. So the problem is not that it's just in the brain, Brian. The problem is it's in the body as well, because it's the emotion that's conditioning the body subconsciously into the past. And now we're 5% conscious mind, 95% subconscious mind. So then that becomes a very profoundly distinct program for that person. So they lose interest in any other thing that is not related to the emotion they're experiencing. In fact, no new information can enter their nervous system that isn't equal to the emotion that they're experiencing, because it's not relevant. Right. They're in survival. Survival says, be prepared for what's about ready to happen. Be prepared for the worst. Be ready. Don't let it get you this time. Know what you're going to do, and it's usually, a very primitive reaction. But if you keep practicing, we have so many brain scans that show so many people healing from anxiety and depression. You can't be anxious if you're in the present moment. You can't be depressed if you're in the present moment. You're in the present moment. You're not thinking about the future or the past, and you start managing that world. Then the body that's holding on to that emotion, when it finally gets trained, like training an animal to sit, if you're working with it, sooner or later, if you keep telling it and training it to sit, sooner or later it's going to acquiesce. Sooner or later it's going to surrender to another mind. And when that happens, boom, there's this liberation of energy.